Everybody, Hubble's Cat. I decided against my better judgment to try some American Pale Ale. It's just going to be a little book review on Heinlein, a sci-fi author I'm reading right now. I'm about 3/4 of the way through the book that I'm going to do as the next Armchair Prepper book, and yeah, the stuff in it I'm enjoying. But a little while ago, Uncle Al, died Bullfrogs 79, did a book review of this, and I actually thought I'd get it and read it. So Uncle Al will be linked, beginning beneath and at the end, and definitely check out Uncle Al's site. It's a good site and lots of interesting thought processes there. And I just wanted to go through this a little bit. So this was written in 1945, and it's interesting. In 1945 the Americans weren't looking at Russia as a threat, or at least Heinlein wasn't, which is interesting. The other thing with this is he talks about insurance. It hits a lot of the red topics that we talk about today. They figured in 1945 40 million Americans would be killed almost immediately by nuclear exchange. They expected it to be an all-out surprise. The countries they felt were threats at the time in 1945 were the Balkans, India, Palestine, Iran, Argentina, Spain, China, the East Indies, etc., etc. This time, 1945, I believe America had just helped Europe win the war against Germany, Japan and Italy, and should have been a comfortable time. They just dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. America was the strongest military force in the world. And yet, even then, they immediately realised these bombs are going to get used by other people and they could be used against us, and we have no defence. Heinlein states quite clearly there will be no government, there will be no police, there will be no nothing. Washington DC will be eradicated straight off. The 48 state capitals would be the secondary targets. I guess you added states after 1945. I don't know for my American history. Hey Bear. And communications centres like Kansas City will also be destroyed. So I'm just going to pause this because Bear is going to make a lot of noise. Hey! So this is Naughty Neighbour. It's supposed to be an American full-bodied pale ale. So he gives the ideas that we all then picked up on in the next decades. I think one of the greatest things here was the interesting thing was that he says survival is strategic and tactical. For nuclear war, the strategic aspect is entirely concerned about not being where the bomb is and mitigating the effects of it. He doesn't mention that, but that's also strategic in a way. The tactical part is how to keep your family and yourself alive through the destruction of the cities and governments. Now, strategy, he recommends moving to Honduras or some other small non-industrialized country, establishing a life there and stop worrying about nuclear war. Now, as we all know, it's not necessarily going to be a good idea, because we have a lot more nuclear war weapons now, and we know about nuclear winter and things like that. But tactically, from a strategic point of view, relocation is a must if you are concerned about nuclear warfare. I think he uses a good analogy here. The pre-war refugees from Nazi Germany could not afford to flee either, but events proved the wisdom of doing so. So the old Chinese adage, in the course of a long life, a wise man will be prepared to abandon his baggage several times. He also says, bearing in mind that's not going to happen for most people, you can do less dramatic things. If you live on a farm or a small village, several miles to 50 is a good figure from the nearest large city. I would say 50 to 100 miles probably now is a better idea. Rail junction, power dam, auto factory, or other likely known as Retarget. Strategy basically takes care of itself, so you can work on tactics. He says if you have to live in a large city or a target area, you should be alert and detail oriented and shifty. I guess he means more cunning than shifty. You have to set up a pre-established bug-out location, emergency home, and you have to get there as soon as you can. Like as soon as you think there's going to be a problem, that's when you have to leave. You have to keep your car full of gasoline. If your tank's not big enough, build an extra gasoline tank, which I guess in 1945 was entirely doable. But he does mention storing gasoline for the bug out, and that's something everybody should do who has a car anyway, because the SHTF could be a local power issue that lasts a week to 3 weeks where you don't have enough gasoline in your area, and if you're actually got gasoline stored up during that period of time, you can use the car and go to work and make money, or go to the hospital. He says the tactical thing is interesting. He says after the attack, which will be about 20 minutes, 40 million is going to be dead straight off the bat. Then there'll be no more government, no more police, no more civilization. He says the countryside is swarming with survivors from the edges of the bombed area, survivors who are hungry, desperate, some of them armed, all of them free of civilizing restrictions of organised living. Enemy troops moving into occupying may be present or may be dropping from the skies any day. Alright, so he talks about 3 methods of tactical preparation, which I think are about relevant. First is your body assets. Get fit, join a gym, get endurance, get vaccinated for typhoid, cholera, all that sort of stuff. Get your appendix taken out in advance, and keep your teeth and have spare eyeglasses. It then talks about collecting and storing various materials and tools that you won't be able to find easily after the nuclear war, so you can create stuff that you need to do. And he talks about pioneer skills, all useful and normal stuff. But this is where it gets interesting. He recommends the Boy Scout manual, and Dave Bullfrog definitely recommends that, and actually sent LA Prepper a very nice copy of it. Yeah, it's not the greatest. And he gives a list of skills, you know, can you do all of these things, right? And 1945 estimate before other nations, when nobody else had nuclear weapons, 2 to 5 years, 5 to 15 years, 5 to 10 years, a very, very long time. As we all know, the 2 to 5 year period was the more accurate one, because well-meaning people felt that the Soviet Union should be given the atomic bomb to stop America attacking them preemptively. I believe they got killed for that by the state. Anyway, so he says look at the merit badges in the Boy Scout manual, figure out which ones you need, and the ones you have already, virtual merit badges, and the ones you need to study up on. He gives good ideas about survival kits in cars. He doesn't mention work or home particularly, but we then evolved into bug out bags and get home bags and things and car kits. But he's talking about a car kit here, the survival kit in a car, and he says you should actually look at what the aviators used in World War II and stock it accordingly according to your needs, distance and climate. And that's reasonably accurate. I think that's, most of us would agree. That when people screech at us online, you have to have that in your bug out bag, or you have to have that in your get home bag, what they're failing to do is see that people are different, and people have different needs, and geography is different. He says shoes will wear out, so you need to know how to make moccasins, but better yet, store enough spare shoes, and that's reasonably good advice. Have a lot of salt if you live inland, like I do. That's also extremely good advice. This is interesting. It's difficult to reject the idea of hoarding cans. A few $100 worth, I mean, so a couple of $1,000 worth in today's terms of cans could make the difference for the first year between starving to death and eating your children. But he says there is great risk in having them. You will become the hated rich if anybody finds out about them. We are assuming there will be no government to protect you. To have canned goods and have it known by anyone outside of your household is to invite assassination. If you do not believe that a man will commit murder for 1 can of tomatoes, then you have never been hungry. I agree. I've been hungry. I agree with him on that. He talks about the invasion of the foreign forces, whoever they would be, and it's interesting he didn't think of Russia at the time. You cannot conquer a free man, you can only kill him. Absolutely true, but I can be free and not killed. That's my pacifist way of looking at that. Frankly, I don't know why you would actually fight for America if American government's been wrecked and destroyed, and the country's destroyed. I think what I would fight for against an occupying force or a tribal force is my own community. I don't know if I'd be that bothered to get killed to support people 80 miles away from where I am. They mention a book, Tom Whittingham's New Ways for War, which we should maybe all get. That's how to fortify stuff. We're going to get into fortifying in a later video. I love this. If you plan for it, you can survive. So yeah, Easily available online. Google it, Goggle it, whatever you do. Print it out, read it. 1945. Not bad stuff. Anyway. This beer is a type of SHTF. I will struggle with it. Au revoir.